Hey, if you've been holding XRP since before this incredible price surge we've been seeing lately, seriously, give yourself a pat on the back. You actually managed to get in before the big institutions did, and that could very well be what sets you up for some serious wealth down the road. Even if you just started picking up XRP recently, you're still way ahead of most institutional players who are going to jump in eventually. I know it might feel like you're showing up late to the party when you're just getting started, but trust me, give it some time and your whole perspective will change. Think about it this way. If you're planning to stick around for the next decade, imagine telling someone in 2035 that you were smart enough to invest in XRP back in 2025. They're going to be pretty jealous. Now, before I dive deeper into this, let me make something crystal clear. I don't have any formal financial training whatsoever. I'm definitely not giving you financial advice here, and you absolutely shouldn't make any buying or selling decisions based on what I'm saying, okay? You're gonna find what I'm about to share pretty fascinating because honestly, I don't think the XRP community has really talked about this enough yet. But here's what I'm seeing, and I'm gonna break it down for you. It's becoming pretty clear to me that XRP's price climb since November isn't really driven by the usual suspects. You know, the retail investors jumping on trends or day traders doing their thing. This time feels completely different from anything we've seen before. What we're actually witnessing is institutional money pouring in. I'm serious about this, and there's real data backing up what I'm saying. Check this out. Here's a headline that really caught my attention. XRP price rally gains momentum with institutional interest and ETF optimism. This was from mid-July, and it perfectly captures what's been driving XRP's amazing run since November 2024. We're talking about serious institutional money flowing in through corporate treasuries, massive whale accumulation, and growing ETF access, even though we don't have spot ETFs in the US yet. Plus, there's this huge surge in on-chain usage for real-world asset tokenization, something I've been diving deep into lately because it's absolutely fascinating. The article backs this up with some solid data too. They're referencing insights from market analytics platforms like Santiment. I'm a huge fan of their work, and Crypto News, showing that XRP's price rally has been powered by increased whale activity, ETF excitement, expanding institutional partnerships, and growing retail interest that you can actually see through social media buzz. Don't get me wrong, retail interest is definitely there, and it's massive. That part's pretty obvious when you look around, but here's the thing. When you actually examine the volume of money flowing in, it becomes really clear that the funds actually moving this market are coming from the institutional side. And that's what I want to dig into because the implications are absolutely mind-blowing. Here's my take on what this means. This cycle could completely blow away anything we've witnessed before. Retail speculators are definitely playing their part, getting caught up in the sentiment and speculative excitement, but the data shows they just don't have the firepower to be the main driving force behind these moves. But here's where it gets really interesting. Later in this market cycle, retail euphoria is going to be what launches XRP's price into the stratosphere. Meanwhile, the early players, including those institutions, are going to start cashing out as prices climb higher. You can absolutely count on that happening. They'll be taking their profits right when newer, less experienced investors are convinced the party's just getting started and prices will keep climbing forever. Want to understand just how powerful retail participation can be during market euphoria? Let's take a trip back to 2017. XRP was sitting at half a penny, and in just 12 months, literally 1 year, it skyrocketed to a peak of $3.35. Here's the kicker. Back then, institutional money was basically nowhere to be found in crypto. We can say with confidence that this incredible price explosion was driven almost entirely by everyday retail crypto investors. It was practically 100% retail powered back in 2017, and what a wild ride that was. But here's where things get really exciting. That was 8 years ago. When retail mania hits this current cycle, and it absolutely will, it's going to make 2017 look like a warm-up act because we're going to have way more people jumping in this time. Think about this for a second. XRP is already cruising comfortably above $3 right now, and that's happening without retail being the main driver behind the price action. When you really grasp that concept, it becomes pretty obvious why things are about to get completely wild. I'm talking absolutely bonkers in the near future. We've got this solid base above $3, thanks to all that institutional money flowing in, and that's before the retail frenzy even kicks into high gear. The number of people who'll be speculating on XRP this time around is going to be massive compared to 2017. Here's some perspective. Back in 2017, Cambridge University did some research and estimated there were somewhere between 2.9 million and maybe 5.8 million unique cryptocurrency users worldwide. Most of them were using Bitcoin wallets, which probably doesn't shock anyone. I can actually show you the exact document here. You can see the highlighted section that's relevant to what we're discussing. Let me scroll up so you can see the title, Global Cryptocurrency Benchmarking Study from 2017, Cambridge University. It's actually pretty interesting to go back and see what people were saying about XRP in their research from way back then. But the main point is that we had a really tiny number of people in crypto at that time. While these numbers cover the entire crypto space, not just XRP investors, they give us great perspective on the scale we're talking about. Crypto ownership was still in its infancy, limited to just a few million people worldwide. So back in 2017, the number of people actually investing in XRP specifically was probably in the low millions or even fewer. Now, I know XRP runs on a public blockchain, so you might think we could just count the wallets. But that doesn't really work for a bunch of reasons. Some people share wallets, others have multiple wallets. It gets messy pretty quickly. But here's the bottom line. It was just some fraction of that tiny group of 2.9 to 5.8 million total crypto users who actually got into XRP. When you think about it in terms of the global population, we're talking about almost 0 humans on the planet. You might as well round it down to nothing. And yet, the price still managed to hit $3.35. This is exactly why I've been so bullish for years now. Once we got legal clarity and the market started heating up again, I knew we'd see incredible gains because XRP's fundamentals have never been stronger. Despite having so few people involved back in 2017, XRP still managed to reach $3.35. Pretty impressive, right? Absolutely it is. So we had just a few million crypto investors worldwide in 2017. But where are we now? There's this company called AAA that focuses on cryptocurrency ownership data. And they reported that by the end of 2024, we had an estimated 560 million crypto investors globally. That's roughly 6.8% of everyone on Earth. Here's what their website says about it. Cryptocurrency adoption is growing worldwide. As a leading cryptocurrency payments company, we aim to provide key statistics to help businesses understand the market better and reach untapped opportunities. As of 2024, we estimated global cryptocurrency ownership at an average of 6.8%, with over 560 million crypto owners worldwide. That's quite a jump, wouldn't you say? And here's where it gets really interesting. We're not even in peak market euphoria mode yet. I don't think anyone would seriously argue with that. But when that euphoria does hit and brings way more speculators into the mix, that number could easily jump to somewhere between 750 to 900 million people by the end of 2025. Just think about these numbers for a second. Think about how high the price went with so few people involved back then. You can see where I'm heading with this, right? With all these new people jumping into crypto, how could XRP's price not absolutely explode from where it sits today? With global crypto adoption happening at this massive scale, retail players are way more numerous than they've ever been. If even just a small fraction of these newcomers decide to take a shot at XRP, the retail participation we see around the next market peak could be 10 to 100 times bigger than what we saw in 2017. I honestly think that's a pretty reasonable expectation. Now, here's an important caveat. Even if we get, say, 100 times more people buying XRP than we had in 2017, that doesn't automatically mean we'll see a 100x price increase. Here's why that is. Back in 2017, most people were buying when there was hardly any liquidity around. The XRP markets specifically were way less liquid than they are now. Order books were super thin, which meant that even small amounts of buying could cause huge price swings. That's absolutely true. And it's exactly why I always tell people that the more money gets poured into something, the harder it becomes to double, triple, or quadruple it. Being early really does pay off. But in 2025, here's what XRP investors are dealing with. Way deeper liquidity than we had in 2017. That means order books can handle much more volume, a lot more, before we see dramatic price movements. So we're probably not going to witness $300 XRP this cycle, but this perspective helps explain why those price predictions floating around, from the conservative $10 estimates all the way up to the more ambitious $30 targets, are completely realistic and grounded in reality. I don't know which analysts are going to nail it when this cycle wraps up, but I can tell you that none of those predictions are crazy. They're all well within the realm of possibility. Plus, as I mentioned earlier, those institutions that got in early are probably going to start taking profits when retail euphoria kicks into high gear, and that's going to put some brakes on the upward momentum too. When big holders start releasing their supply gradually, price appreciation slows down even with more buyers jumping in. That's just how markets work. But honestly, all of that's totally fine and exactly what we should expect to happen. Here's what I'm really trying to say. We're about to see an incredible wave of people jump into this market and drive some serious price action. If you're tuning in during late July or early August 2025, give yourself some credit because you actually made it in before the crazy part starts. But make no mistake, that crazy part is absolutely on its way. Here's exactly how this is going to play out. Those of you who were smart enough to buy at lower prices are going to start cashing out when things get really heated. At the same time, the newcomers jumping in during all the excitement are going to feel way more confident than they probably should. Most of them will be total beginners when it comes to investing, and that's just the natural cycle of these things. I found this fascinating article on investing.com that really nails how these everyday retail investors typically act. It wasn't even focused on crypto, but it's super recent, maybe a week and a half old. The title says it all. Retail speculation is back with a vengeance. Now, they were discussing traditional stocks, which is somewhat different territory. We're clearly not in crypto euphoria mode yet, but their observations about how people behave are incredibly relevant to our world too, just with much higher stakes and way bigger risks in the crypto space. Honestly, that's exactly why I'm drawn to this space. I'm totally here for the crazy swings because volatility is what makes investing worthwhile in the first place. Without those wild moves, what's the point of any of this? I genuinely get excited when things get absolutely bonkers. Check out what they had to say. This cycle of retail speculation is nothing new. In early 2021, just months before the market corrected in 2022, we noted how inexperienced retail investors were rushing into markets. In a piece titled Long on Confidence and Short on Experience, love that title, we highlighted how retail traders exhibited high confidence without the experience to manage risk appropriately. Online searches for terms like how to trade stocks surged, echoing similar speculative periods from the late 1990s and mid-2000s. So yeah, they're definitely on their way. But here's the really thrilling part. XRP has established itself at this solid base level, sitting pretty above $3 while I'm making this. Could it drop? Sure. But that's not the point. What matters is that it's operating in completely new territory, a whole different ballpark compared to where it was just a year ago. The transformation has been absolutely remarkable. Here's the crucial piece. Institutional money made this possible. Retail frenzy always shows up at the tail end of these cycles. All those retail investors who haven't jumped in yet, and there aren't many so far, are going to trigger an explosive run-up in XRP's value. What gets me excited is realizing we've reached this price territory with XRP, something that would have been impossible back in 2017 simply because institutional players weren't in the game yet. Just understanding that institutional capital has been the main force behind most of XRP's performance so far. And look, I'm definitely not dismissing the retail participation that's already happening. Of course, we've definitely seen more wallets being created and all that activity, but when you actually look at the cash flows, which is what really drives prices, that's where the institutional money becomes crystal clear. This isn't really up for debate anymore. The data just speaks for itself on this one. When you think about how few people it actually took to drive prices up in the past, and even accounting for the fact that we've got different liquidity conditions now, I honestly think what's coming price-wise is going to be absolutely mind-blowing. We're talking staggering moves here. We'll find out what that actually means in dollar terms by the time this cycle wraps up, but I'm expecting prices to go way higher than where we are right now. This is exactly why I mentioned at the beginning, if you're positioned right now, this could be exactly how you build serious wealth with XRP. You managed to get in before those big institutions with their massive war chest really started pouring money in, and then you can add the cherry on top, all those typical retail speculators who show up at the end of cycles thinking they've got it all figured out when they actually don't have a clue. They're definitely coming. And here's the thing, they're going to be the exit liquidity for everyone who got in early. That's just how this whole thing works, folks. That's the reality of market cycles. Just remember, I'm not a financial advisor, and you absolutely should not make any buying or selling decisions based on anything I'm saying or writing here. That would be a really, really bad idea.